Dear children, today we are going to learn chapter 2 from Geography class 10, Forest and Wildlife Resources. We all know human beings along with all living organisms form altogether a complex web of an ecological system. Now in this chapter, you would come to know more about flora and fauna in India, and subsequently we shall be discussing the important role that forests play in the ecological system. We will also come to know how can we conserve forest and wildlife in India. So, conservation of our forest and wildlife resources is an important factor to ensure that our country remains rich in its flora and fauna. India is one of the world's richest countries in terms of its vast array of biological diversity. Now, this is very significant and a matter of pride for all of us that we belong to a country which is the world's richest countries in terms of flora and fauna. Now, different varieties of forest and wildlife resources which are found in India are varied. It is in diverse nature. Based on the International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, we can classify different categories of existing plants and animals species. Now let us try to understand the classification in true sense. The first classification comes under normal species, the species whose population levels are considered to be normal for their survival. Say for example, all the cattle that we see, the trees like sal, pine, and the rodents that survive in the forest. Second, those species which are endangered. Now they are in danger of extinction. Say for example, like black buck, crocodile, Indian wild ass, Indian rhino, lion-tailed macaw, then some sort of deer in Manipur like brow, antler deer, etc. They are endangered species. Some of the species are classified on the basis of their vulnerability. They are vulnerable. These population has declined to levels that it is likely to move into the endangered category in the near future if it continues to decline in the same manner. Now the animals that come in this category are blue sheep, Asiatic elephant, Gangetic dolphin, etc. There are a few species in the flora and fauna of India which are called rare species. They have got a very small population and they may move into the endangered or vulnerable category if the negative factors affecting them continue to operate. The examples of such species are the Himalayan brown bear, wild Asiatic buffalo, desert fox and hornbills, etc. There are a few species which are termed endemic species. These are those species which are only found in some particular areas, usually isolated by natural or geographical barriers. For example, Andaman teal, Nicobar pigeon, Andaman wild pig, Mithun in Arunachal Pradesh, so on and so forth. And some of the species which are extinct from a local area, region or a country or a continent, or you may say from the entire earth, they are called extinct species. Among these species, we have the examples of Asiatic cheetah, pink-head duck, etc. Now, such a fearful depletion of the flora and fauna are being envisioned and people are working to safeguard, but there are a few negative factors which cause such depletion. Let us now try to understand what are those negative factors. Number one, excessive consumption of natural resources for fulfilling our needs such as wood, bark, leaves, rubber, medicines, dyes, food, fuel, fodder, manure. We are affecting the flora and fauna of our country. The second negative factor is the expansion of the railways, agriculture, commercial and scientific forestry and mining activities. We have to put an injunction to this, because if we continue expanding in such a manner, there would always be a threat of the depletion of the flora and fauna of our own country. Third important factor is the large scale development of projects. We need to stop going for this activity. And the fourth, unequal access, inequitable consumption of resources and differential sharing of responsibility for environmental well-being. So, these are the four basic negative factors that can cause fatal depletion of the flora and fauna of our country. So, what is the remedy? We need to learn how to conserve our forest and wildlife. Conservation basically preserves the ecological diversity and preserves the genetic diversity of plants and animals. So, the Indian Wildlife Protection Act was implemented in 1972, and it was for protecting the habitats, and an all India list of protected species were published. Second step which was taken by the central government was that it announced several projects for protecting specific animals. Under the Wildlife Act of 1980 and 1986, several hundred butterflies, moths, beetles and one dragonfly have been added to the list of protected species. In the pursuit of conservation and preservation, in 1991, for the very first time, plants were also added to the list, starting with 6 species. Now, there are varieties of types and distribution of forest and wildlife resources in our country. We need to understand this also. They are owned and managed by the government through the forest department or other government departments. These are classified under several categories. There are forests which are known as reserved forests. More than half of the total forest land in India has been declared reserved in today's scenario. Some of the forests are termed protected forests. Forest department has declared 1/3 of the total forest area as protected forest. And yet there are some of the forests which are unclassed. These are those forests and wastelands which belong to both government and private individuals and communities. Northeastern states and parts of Gujarat have been very high percentage of their forests as unclassed forests. So, reserved and protected forests, dear children, are also referred to as permanent forests, which are maintained for the purpose of producing timber and other forest produce and for protective reasons. Madhya Pradesh has the largest area under permanent forests. Now, conservation is a responsibility of community also. So, we need to see that conservation of the forest and wildlife resources is very important. So, what are the steps which have been taken by the commoners? The community people have started thinking about the conservation of our forest and wildlife resources. In Sariska Tiger Reserve, Rajasthan, villagers have fought against mining by citing the Wildlife Protection Act. Now, second example, the inhabitants of 5 villages in the Albar district of Rajasthan have declared 1,200 hectares of forest as the Bhairodev Dakav Sanctuary. Villages came up with their own set of rules and regulations. Amazing. And they do not allow hunting in that area. They are also protecting the wildlife against any outside encroachments. Now you all know about the Chipko movement. It has become very famous in the Himalayas, and it was one successful attempt to resist deforestation in several areas. The movement has also resulted in community afforestation. Further, farmers and citizens groups like the Beej Bachao Andolan in Tehri and Navdanya have shown that adequate levels of diversified crop production without the use of synthetic chemicals are possible, and they are also economically viable. It's a good step taken by farmers and citizens group, and they have been into this revolution of Beej Bachao Andolan. That's a wonderful idea. Now, India Joint Forest Management Program furnishes a very good example for involving local communities in the management and restoration of degraded forests. Thus, we have come to know about the flora and fauna of our own country, and also the procedures to preserve this natural resources, and at the same time we have also come to know that there is a vital role of community in conservation of this flora, fauna, forest life and animal life. Hope this audio strengthens your preparations for board examinations. Stay tuned with DNA Education on YouTube.